Hello, everybody. Welcome to VAFF, Vancouver Asian Film Festival, our industry panels, and our Asians in Music panel. I wanted to first acknowledge that we are coming from the unceded territories of the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Musqueam First Nations people, and we are very grateful to be able to work and play on these lands. Tonight, we have a really special treat for you. We have Ben Chan from MNRK Music. Ben and I first met in 2019 when we had him out for a music sync panel with other music supervisors. And we got to just touch on the surface, but tonight we get Ben all to ourselves for 30 minutes, and then we have some time for a Q&A. So I wanted to introduce Ben and his bio and all the things that he does, but we're going to dig into that a little bit more. Ben has worked in the industry for over 15 years. He works in sync and licensing and publishing administration at MNRK Music. The companies and clients include Arkells, Chromeo, Chuck Berry Catalog, The Stereotypes, among many others. As part of the record label, he pitches, negotiates, and licenses music for film, television, video games, soundtracks, along with new media platforms that become available. Through publishing, he works with various writers on copyrights, provides royalty statement and accounting, and from time to time handles the coordination between writers to work together for collaboration on song ideas. Welcome, Ben.
Thanks, Barb. Thanks for having me. And so the way you pronounce MNRK is monarch. So it's monarch. Music.
Okay.
And, yeah, it's based on the monarch butterfly.
Nice, which actually goes well with our RESO butterfly.
Cool.
But before we dig into it, I was amiss not to thank our sponsor, which is Creative BC, who has provided funding for these music panels and sessions that we have, and also CMF, who is a partner sponsor of VAFF Festival, and we have many other sponsors that we will be showing we'll be highlighting in the reel. So sorry about from Monarch. So Ben, I know it's 8 o'clock there in Toronto time, so thank you for going into your dinner time. But why don't you start with just giving us a little bit of your origin story? How did you start in this business? Are you a musician? Tell us about how you got where you are now.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, no problem being 8 my time. If I'm not doing this, I'll probably be working until like 9 o'clock or so. So this fits right in. Yeah, my story, I'm not a professional musician. I do have a background in music, sure, but that's all personal. As far as growing up and playing piano, I did the Royal Conservatory of Music growing up, and as a hobby, if anything else, a bit of bass guitar, classical guitar too. Always just a fan of music, live music, from, I guess, elementary school all the way up into high school, just kind of always been around it, and especially in high school, around a lot of friends who were in bands and supported them as best I could. And that kind of, led me to just having friends and meeting people along the way and networking with them to get myself further into the industry. And my path, it didn't at all start in music. I went to university for business. I was in a commerce program. And after that, I ended up going to Japan for a few years to teach English, and came back to Canada. And from that point, I just kind of kept in touch with the right people who were musicians and in the music business, who told me that, if you're interested, to be around music and you want to work in this business, just find a spot as an intern, I guess, like most other entertainment industries out there, to, get a foot in the door. And that's what I did. So I started doing that probably around 2006, 2007. And from there, worked my way up to getting into a record label and publishing company called Last Gang Records, Last Gang Publishing. Started from there and kind of built out into sync and licensing. I didn't start in sync licensing. I didn't actually think I was going to do that as part of my job and part of my career. I initially started out doing digital coordination, marketing, all that stuff as an intern. And just the position opened up at the company. So that's how I began working in sync licensing and copyright management as part of the pub admin, and have built out from there. And so starting off at Last Gang and moving over into different entities or incarnations from Last Gang to E1, at a point even Hasbro, and then into the name Monarch Music. That's in a nutshell, essentially, that's pretty much how I started. I've always just been a fan of live music, and I think that's sort of been the drive, and love supporting, being a patron of the arts, really. That's my thing for music.
Great. So you're doing what you love to do. So that
Yes.
is amazing. I think we all want to do that, have that in our professional life, all our passions. So I thought maybe we'd just do a very quick introduction of music sync and licensing. Is there a difference between the two? Because the starting point is that we want to talk to musicians, songwriters, people who are producing music, and then how do they get in to film, television, and media?
Sure. I mean, when we're using the word sync, it's just the short form for synchronization to a visual, I guess, a moving picture. And that could be across various platforms, film, television, video games, and going back to TV, you're talking about commercials, advertisements, trailers as well. And so that part of it for sync, what, a record label, a publisher, or the artist themselves, an agent, a representative, we'd pitch our music for potential sync use or placement in that world. And the licensing part of it, that aspect would come in after, we'll get into it more, as far as the process to have it land. And when you start to license out the rights for that song, essentially through the contract between, say, the production company and the licensor, or the person who owns the sound recording and the sound composition in the song.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So you said that, if you weren't on this, you would probably be working right now still. So I wanted to talk about what the work that you do, and so that we can understand as musicians, how would we work with you as a music supervisor?
Sure. So if a musician has a song that's created, whether it's commercial music for, say, a single release or an album release, EP, whatever it is on their side, for their fans to consume, for that music to be considered by a music supervisor in that world for sync and licensing, it's either they could pitch it themselves, talking to the music supervisor as the gatekeeper to that world, essentially, either getting a search or a brief from them directly, or through if they're signed to a record label or a publisher, through someone like me as a representative, where I'd send that out to, maybe a client of mine and say, hey, this is the search. Do you think anything would fit? Or you've given me your catalog already, and I am I've familiarized myself with your music. And so whenever I see that brief or that search with the creative criteria, I see if there's a fit with what the music you as a musician have given to me that I'm allowed to represent. And that's a way for the artist's music to be considered for this world. So I, as the representative for your music, would pitch that, without going into too many details, but, there will be contracts, pre-existing agreements done in place, a record label deal, a publishing deal. Or if you have a boutique company, an independent company that's just a sync rep, those people could represent your music and pitch to the music supervisor. And so, once all the contracts are done, we have that right to pitch your music and represent your music on the label and publishing side. And that's the most common way, I would say, that music from artists would get sent to supervision companies, clearance companies, to be considered. And so our job is to wait for those searches. So we're constantly talking to supervisors, and they're sending us briefs, or we're doing the general send outs, those emails to say, hey, an album has dropped. or we're giving advances to them. It's like, this new single is going to be dropping, a month from now. Here's an early preview, and feel free to consider it for your projects. So that's a way that we do that for the artists. If the question is, how do I, as the musician or the artist, self-published, self-owned master, how do I get that music directly to the music supervisor's hands? I would say first do your research on which shows, which films you like, and always, especially with films, always pay attention to the end credits, right? Because all that information is in there, who usually the music supervisor is, or the music department, and what songs are used. And so when you start to pay attention to those names, and you as the artist, if you have that bandwidth and time, to say, okay, I'm going to be in the studio, but I also have that business savvy to kind of do that research and find out who I need to talk to. And I know, that this song has two sides of the coin. You have the record label side, the sound recording side, and the composition side, the publishing, that I represent both on. So I am that one stop. We like to use that term one stop, because I'm that one person to go to clear both of those things. So as the musician, the artist who owns that, you could do your research on the music supervisor that's attached to whatever project. Look it up on IMDb, wherever online, or pay for whatever subscriptions you can get through Hollywood Reporter, things like that. You can find those lists as well online. If you truly want to do it yourself and put in that time, to kind of be that your own sync rep, you can do that. It's just, again, carve out, make that space and schedule it the way you can. Do that research on that supervisor. If you can find that contact, the next question is, how do you get their attention? Because you're not the only one emailing them. There are a lot of people, and with say even just 10 people submitting something, maybe they're sending 5 to 10 songs. You multiply that out, and then et cetera, it just builds, and they have to sort of long list to short list to just make that decision on music. But sometimes you get lucky, like, oh my god, this song fits perfectly creatively for this scene that I have, and I just want to clear it right away. So you can do that on your own. It's just a matter of finding out who is the person to talk to. Do they make their contact readily available? Or go to events like yours, at film festivals, conferences, and these conferences will have panels, and they'll make themselves available at the end of the day to say, like, you kind of have to line up and wait for them to talk to them, and hopefully you can grab their information and follow up with them after, and maybe try to find out a bit of personal information with them with regards to music, of course. Keep it professional, but like whatever they share with you, maybe there's like things in common and things that they talk about. So try to maybe make it more of a bespoke personal approach. And if you have that email, once you get the mic to talk to them, make sure you're ready to speak and provide your music. And so if you're doing, if you're doing it yourself and sending it to the supervisor, so this is preparing that package.
Yeah.
Don't send anything by email as an attachment. As you know, that's more of an annoyance than it is, anything good. So use some kind of platform to send your music, whether it's WeTransfer, Dropbox, Box.com. These days, I think Disco, that site, everybody talks about that. And excuse me, anyone within, I think the supervision community will know that that's sort of like the go-to. So they, on these briefs that get sent around, the supervisors themselves will have that link and say, upload it to here. So, you could just click on that link, and then they can categorize it and organize it much more easily. They have the personal library in front of them for that project to consider. So, never send anything by an attachment. I think I'm sure a lot of musicians or artists have heard that a lot these days if they've attended conferences and whatnot. It's like, that's just a big no-no. And then the next thing is the metadata, or the information you make available in your song. Make sure it's clearly stated as who owns the master and who do you contact for the master. If it's X artist, that can sign off on the record label side, put your own contact information, maybe in the grouping section or the composer section, wherever it is, that you can see, like what you see in iTunes. And then the publishing information, make sure you list out, who are all the writers or composers with the proper percentages. And if it's just you as the 100%, easy to just put your own contact information. If there are three and it's split a third each, make sure it's clear that if you're that one person who can speak on behalf of your band members and clear on behalf of all of them, just kind of say like point of contact, this person or this email, and that's it. If it's multiple and those, you're working with other creatives, and let's just say that they need to have other people and they have other publishers, list that publishing company as well. List their contacts too. Just make sure it's all clear. That's it. It's a perfect roadmap for music supervisors that way.
Perfect. So you get a lot of information in that answer. I'm going to summarize it for our listeners because it's really important. It took me a long time to understand this, and it's really important. So the number one thing Ben said is do not attach an MP3 or an attachment to an email. Find out what these platforms are to send your music as links or as a platform where the music supervisor can go in and listen to your music and download it if they want to. So Disco was one of them. There's a bunch of others. We don't want to just promote one. And in that platform, when you upload your song, you can put the metadata, which is the information about the song, and important who owns the master, who the contact person, and any publishing information. So I just wanted to make sure that that's clear because you want to make the job for yourself as a music supervisor as easy as possible. So they may like your song, but if it's so difficult to find information about, then they might just pass on because there could be another song that's similar, maybe not quite as fitting, but it's a lot easier to clear and get a hold of the person.
Yeah, exactly. And there's always a backup. Think of it that way too, right? Like they will have backup ideas in case something they know is like, whoa, there are a lot of parties involved in this, or is the information I'm getting, can I trust that information? Will I be able to, go get these proper clearances? So the clearance process to get the quote. So that's the first step of getting things formalized. You as the artist or the musician, they either send you a one-page request form, you fill out that information for them. And so, yes, there will be the metadata information. That's the first part, right? Like you have that information in there. So what you've said in the metadata, it has to translate to what you're going to fill out in that form. And so when that quote is filled out and you're signing it, you're saying, yes, everything I told you is true. I've legally signed this form to say I represent everything I've said. So it's 100% of the master, 100% of the publishing. And that quote is officially in place. It doesn't mean it's going to get used for their show or for the film, whatever it is. It's just that you have agreed to deal points. So they will present, if you look at a TV show or a film, the basic deal terms or the always asks are all media, worldwide, perpetuity. So they need to know that you agree to that based on the fee that they have proposed to you or that you have agreed to. And once you've signed off on that based on what you originally put in the song, and it shows up again as like, yep, what I said is still true. It's not going to change. And here's the quote. And how long it takes for them to get back to you to confirm it. That's always a good question. I wish I had an answer for that. But yes, it's at least at that point that you've made the job easy for them to do that part.
Mm-hmm. And I have to, like when I hear that and kind of the stuff that I've been learning is that it's on the artist when they're packaging their songs to be sent out that they do their homework and their due diligence, because a music supervisor like yourself will be taking it to all the, to the productions. And if somewhere along the line, some of the information is not correct, like that.
And it's not a perfect world that way. It can have, so sometimes things happen where, you said this and maybe, I don't know, maybe all of a sudden you realize there's a sample involved. I'm talking from the perspective of, somebody as like a third party boutique sync representative or even a record label or a publisher. It's like, hey, we thought this didn't have a sample, or we didn't know that you had involved this as an interpolation or whatever it is. Where it's like, oh, there is another party involved and they have to legally clear their own separately from this. So that can happen as a result of, just not having that information all together in the first place. That happens. Mm-hmm. But hopefully it doesn't happen often. You don't want to be that person, whether you're the label publisher or the artist themselves sending it to the supervisor and telling them like, hey, this is what it is. And then the supervisor goes to the showrunner or editor, whoever it is on the production, to say, yeah, this, I think you're good to lock to picture if you want to go ahead. This is what I have in place. You don't want to screw it up that way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's so. Then let's shift it because we don't have a lot of time. But I want to talk about, like, as a musician or an artist, you write the song, and what would you say? Because I think we have a lot of people in the audience who write a lot of their own songs, so they will own all the rights to it. So can you talk about what they need to do to get their songs ready? And are you just kind of shopping one song, or what kind of advice, or how many songs? What's a good mix of songs?
It's really up to you as the creative. You're coming up with, like, what do you want to do with that song in the first place? What is your motivation behind it, right? As an artist or musician, maybe you don't care about the idea of sync. It's like, I just want to make music the way I make music. This is my brand. This is my identity. Or you're trying to find out who you are, and maybe you're signed to a record label publisher and they have an A&R who helps you through those steps to get you to where you want to be. Maybe you don't even know, and then they'll, you need that guidance, and you have a team around you to help you get there. And so that's the first question for yourself. Where do I want my own sound? Where's that sound? Is that representative of me? And is this what I want to put out in the world? And so, does it mean it's sync worthy? Sometimes you create that song that sync just follows, right? As far as trends go, it's like, oh, maybe some people never thought of it as a sync song. And so they see you as truly as somebody who's pioneered sound for sync. But, sync does really, it's been here long before I have been in this industry. And it's one of those things that if you're looking at briefs for TV spots or commercials, it's like, there will be call to action lyrics. There will be a certain sound in the production, be much more professionally polished in sound for, if you're looking for car ads and things like that. But then there's the organic side of it, or a stripped down acoustic type song. So, you may be doing that already, and it just lines up perfectly with what is already happening in sync, or the trends that are happening in sync. So, in that way, it's just like you naturally gravitate towards that without thinking. And you've made that music, you as the artist, but it's like, hey, people love that anyway for sync, and I want to use it in a dramatic montage for this film or this TV show. And you never thought of it for sync, and it works great that way. But if you want to focus on sync, you want to create a song just for that. And with the clients that I have on the record label side or the publishing side, if there is a genuine interest to focus your time and be in the studio doing that, and you're open to me telling you, like, not telling you make this song purely on like a manufactured cheese, it's more like, hey, here are some loose points to work off of, or these are the things I normally see, or these are the briefs that come in. So in general, sync likes this. If you want to, if you can get somebody to give you a guiding hand that way, or you can kind of just do it yourself, like go to YouTube or whatever is available out there, start watching trailers and listening to, if you want to make more orchestral style music and following what happens in those 2 to 3 minute trailers, that can be a guide for you. Same with just looking at TV shows, and if they're using more commercial music in it, find out if you have music similar to that, or if you want to kind of mirror that. But yeah, there's a way to custom approach that if you're talking about working in commercials and making it much more friendly for sync that way. So I mean, I know our time is short, and I kind of want to dive into it more with you. But I think you have a few other questions you want to throw out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just such a great conversation. I mean, I like to always summarize, because I think as artists, you can just write your music and there could be a match. But if you want to be in the sync world and write music for film and television, there are genres that are often popular. Like, I was told anthems and sort of like about friends. Like, there's certain general themes, poppy ones, kind of.
Yeah, if you're, sorry to cut you off. Yeah, like when you said like anthem, something that's anthemic, or like female empowerment, going to things that can really pull on the human emotions, and if you're talking about just the certain things within the music itself or the melody that you're trying to draw people in to hook them in that way, try to pay attention to that more, those big swells or those drops when it comes to trailer uses, and but really in general, like for commercials too, you could have that. And like the emotional part of it, or the upbeat happy, sometimes they say we want those bells and whistles, but sometimes they say we want to move away from those bells, or the claps, vocalizations, the oohs, ahs, that can come up, but then there's a trend away from it. So just try to pay attention to those things. If you are an artist who, if you're on those search lists and you're hearing that, or if you have a representative in sync who's telling you, hey, these are the briefs that are coming, and you're starting to notice a pattern or a trend, try to create music based off of that if you're doing a sync focus for that. But you, as in your genre of music, there's always space for something somewhere, for your kind of music, whatever genre. It's just the more far out ones, if you're talking maybe heavy metal, it's going to be harder to find spots for that music, but there are spots for that.
Yeah. So with the few minutes we have left, can you tell us about what you're seeing in the briefs that are coming in?
Sure.
And in this moment with, just there's more attention to underrepresented artists. Are you seeing more briefs and asks for people from the Asian community, artists from the Asian community? And what are some of these?
Definitely. Over, I guess, the past couple of years, especially with everything with the pandemic and a lot of different movements that have been happening. Our company, we create playlists that are purely like BIPOC community, AAPI, LGBTQ. Like, here are the playlists, and we're doing that because we want to make sure that with our artists who say, this is part of our brand and this is part of who we are. Those are the lists that we're creating for playlists, so we can do monthly sends to the community, the sync community out there, and have it available that way, and let people know, like, if you're searching for specifically this for your show, and that your show is looking for, and we've seen that, it's like it would be nice to see somebody place a song here with a musician that is from this specific community. So yes, that has come up in searches, big and small, film, TV, big productions, small productions, or I should say big budgets, low budgets, same thing. It's just, it has, especially over the last 2 years, with everything that's happened, without diving in, because that's a whole nother conversation with politics and all that stuff. I would love to talk about it with you for sure. But for the context of these searches, they are showing up, and we are seeing them, if not daily, weekly, that type of thing, where it's like, we want to make sure that we are serving that. And especially the Asian American, Asian Canadian, you and I have, are working together on that front, and you see searches from me, and I've been sending you those things where I say they are specifically looking for Mandarin or Vietnamese pop, J-pop, K-pop, all that. So if not North American, something over from an Asian territory where it is pop music, or at least a style of music where you have an Asian person playing front and center. And so I guess if we go back 20, 30 years, maybe you probably wouldn't find that, as I would assume not, especially being in the industry and having those searches. I don't know if they came up the way they do today. So
are you finding enough people working in that? Like, because we've been so underrepresented that people have not felt that there was a place for them. So now that there is a demand for it, are you finding that the community wasn't prepared for this demand, or like, how do we accelerate it?
Especially getting to know you and all that you're doing to champion the rights of, our identity and being in music, film, TV, whatever it is. I think I shouldn't use the word plethora. There's a lot out there that like music is just, it's a global thing, and it's being created by so many people, not just but as far as servicing for specifically sync in this industry, I do talk to you about what's available out there. There are people on our roster. We do. When I say that, I mean, the Asian segment of that, whether it is Asian American or Asian Canadians singing songs within the like having English lyrics. We do have that, but the abundance of it, I'm not seeing that like across the board. Not just saying with like we have a wide variety on Monarch Music, and I think that's what I'm proud of and proud to be a part of our company for. Because we have people who within our company who are actively seeking that to have that proper diversity and representation. But do we have enough of it for these searches? It is a harder find, right? Like to have do you have a Mandarin song?
Yeah.
Maybe, but what's the subject matter? Do you want a
Yes.
love song? Do you want a sad ballad? Where are we going here? Or does it have to be like a heavy metal song, or does it have to be a reggae track? I'm not going to find a lot of that in an Asian language, or if it's going to be within a genre where you have an Asian fronted band, like you see that. We'll have a few that I know of on Monarch, but hard to find. Sure, I would say it's just a matter of giving that opportunity more and searching it out, I guess.
And I think that's what we want to do, is to help nurture that, and so that it'll make your job easier too down the road, because we want to nurture that. So I think one of the questions I do want to ask, and I'm sure people are out there, is what is the production level? What is the production level that the singers, the artists, because especially for some people who are new and don't have like a studio that they can go to, and a lot of them might be working from their bedroom or basement, because we've heard people write and it still sounds great. So maybe you can talk a little bit about production levels.
Yeah, it all depends on I think the kind of project that's presented and what they are looking for. I mentioned earlier, sometimes it's a stripped down acoustic sound. It's a very organic sound. So like when I say acoustic, maybe just a piano or just an acoustic guitar and a voice, and that's all you're recording.
Okay.
And so there's really no bells and whistles involved in that, and you don't have to go super crazy and get a producer, engineer. Like it's just really record that on maybe whatever software application you have, and if that is what's being asked, you don't need to go too much more than that. Maybe that's the best way I can put it. But if you're going into a higher quality production song where you have multiple people in the room, you have maybe a producer and a couple extra songwriters. You need a mixer. You need those engineers along the way, and somebody to master it. At a point, and that could take a bit more time. And there are, I think, standard approaches of what you do in the studio. I'm not a studio guy by any means or at all, and so I don't want to say, hey, this is the way to do it. But I'm sure if you got somebody in a panel to tell you this is our standard approach, you could, that's a whole nother conversation. But then you could have a conversation from an artist who says, well, I want to go against exactly what you're doing and create my own sound, because what you're telling me to do here, I'm just going to go against the grain on that and do this and make this the sound. I don't know exactly what that would entail to go against the grain for sync specifically. But you could, create a very non-traditional sounding track that's not it's still quality. You can go through that whole process of mixing to mastering, and you have many people involved, and the levels of that song, EQing and all that. It's one of those things that, the supervisor would love to hear that, but sometimes even if it's not fully mastered, I think, Barb, I've told you this before, it's like, hey, sometimes they don't care that they've heard something where maybe you're a perfectionist as the musician. It's like, oh, I still want to get it to here. It's like, well, you gave this to me maybe in demo form and I sent it around. They're good with it. So case by case, that's how I can answer that when it comes to quality of production. And I hard for me to say it's like this is the exact standard. But if you're recording it, and the biggest thing for me is like with the mic, and if there's a hollow sound, or if you're not purposely creating maybe an echo or reverb, and if it's not sounding professional that way, then I go back to you and try to talk it a bit longer through to see if there's anything we can do to get that up to snuff, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So would you recommend, because you're saying that there was some briefs for in Mandarin, or
Yeah.
Okay, would you recommend somebody who wrote a song in English and sang it in English, sing it in a different language?
Sure. I mean, I wouldn't go nuts creating that type of catalog, but make that available. That is a brief that, came up not too long ago, where, they had asked for a song in a different language. Do you have anything available, in Mandarin? And it would be a cover of a specific song, or from this era. So yes, try to make those available if you're thinking sync. I don't see those often, right? Like I said, don't go nuts doing that. If anything, try to do your research and finding out what you think would fit most, or what you're hearing a lot in shows or films, and try to, if you have a sync focus that way, create that song. Part of the package of getting it ready, make sure, having the stems available is good to have, normally not asked unless you're dealing, I guess, more in the advertising world, but at least have the original song with the instrumental,
Right.
and have the high res versions of those, have those as waves, have the lyrics available as well when you're singing the songs, and if it's a commercially released song, have the artwork available after that.
Right.
So yeah, that's but to prepare anything, let's just go to the those more unique asks when you're talking about Asian songs. Like if you can do a Vietnamese pop song, those don't get asked a lot, but they do get asked. And yes, or something in a Southeast Asia, go over the list of languages. It doesn't happen a lot, but kind of just try to figure out, if whatever your original, if you're born and raised here like me, I'm Chinese, but I, with my parents, when they speak to me in Cantonese, I just usually answer back in English. So I've not really exercised, that tongue. In Mandarin, don't even try to speak with me, because I'll be like, I'll just use a one-word response to be like, sorry, I only speak a little bit, sort of thing. But yeah, if you can practice that and create those songs, it won't be asked of right away. But if you have it in your back pocket, it'll be good to have. And as your own record label, maybe you can release it through an indie distro means by yourself, through digital service providers or DSPs.
Mm-hmm.
You're making that song available, and that way, if you put it out in the world, I'm assuming supervisors will also search through, whether it's Spotify, Apple Music, or even on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
If they are looking for making a playlist, and they're just looking for something that's in the AAPI community or within a specific language. So record it, yes. I would say do it, but just don't go nuts doing it.
Yes. No, I hear you. I've had 2 Vietnamese pop song briefs come across my desk this year, and one Korean with English. They wanted some English and Korean together. So I'm hearing it a little bit through all the different sources that I'm talking to. So I agree. Don't spend a lot and do a lot on it, but have it in your back pocket in case it gets asked. I want to thank you so much for taking this time out of your evening to to give us some of your knowledge and to share. And I think there was a lot of information tonight. So I want to thank you. I want to thank everyone who attended tonight, and also this will be available. We just have to work out the details on where it will be available. And another shout out is that VAFF, through its Asians in Music, will have a full day workshop and panels in April. I think it'll be either April or May, but look on vaff.org. We'll have more information. There's a lot to be learned about music synchronization, and we want to help the community have success in this area. and we want to have our voices heard. So thank you everyone for tonight. Thank you, Ben. I'm sure
Thank
we'll
you.
be in touch, and enjoy your evening, everyone.